let's talk about the big news. Well, there were two big things that happened this past week, but let's start with on the Marvel front. On the Marvel movies front, we saw the news that Robert Downey Jr. is in negotiations to star in Captain America 3. Of course, as Tony Stark, and that it would basically be the Civil War storyline.
Pretty amazing.
Even though some of the rumors, according to the Badass Digest, is that it's either going to be Civil War or Fallen Sun. Either way, grim times ahead for the MCU.
Yeah.
We're looking at a
we
time.
We should say that we're about to talk a little bit about
little spoilers
the
about the comics
of the comic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, basically, if you guys don't know, as the title Civil War would suggest, the Marvel heroes, particularly the Avengers, start turning on each other because of federal legislation. In the comics, it's about no more secret identities. Basically, come out of the superhero closet and work for the government, get registered. It's the Superhero Registration Act, I think.
The
is what it's
Superhero
called.
Registration Act, which they sort of seeded this in
Yeah.
Cap 2. They seeded
Yeah.
these events, and we speculated that maybe this is where they had.
And we
they were
saw a
headed.
little bit in Iron Man 2 with his sort of anti-government stance in terms of they wanted his armor. Now, what's interesting about this is, according to, I believe it was Variety, Robert Downey Jr. is essentially then the antagonist of Iron Man 3. Tony Stark is the antagonist.
Of Cap 3.
I'm sorry, of Captain America 3, yes.
Many people would say
Many people would say the first thing was also true.
Well, this begs the question, with this now being a real game changer for the next phase of Marvel movies, with possibly, if you follow the comics storylines, I mean, Captain America could, I'm just saying Cap could.
Spoiler, and we're going to say it right now.
I'm just saying, possibly Cap could get whacked.
Oh, he's totally going to get iced.
He's done.
He's done.
As we've said
He's
many
toast.
times on this podcast.
We have. I mean, they set it up with Winter Soldier to head to exactly this direction. Evans has made it crystal clear that he is ready to be complete with this process.
But here's an interesting thing. Marvel, as I believe we've talked about before, and if we haven't, there are reports and rumors that, look, they're going to try it, and maybe we won't see Cap and Thor for a little while because they're trying to hold them to those last one or two contractual commitments. So maybe they're going to take a little breather, and he'll get a little room to kind of go and do so. I'm talking about Chris Evans, do some other things maybe he'd like to do. He's really, he just directed his first movie, yada, yada. But my main question to the panel is, with Tony Stark essentially the antagonist of Captain America 3, and with this now ushering in possibly splitting up the Avengers and just being a game changer for the next phase or two of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, are heroes the new villains in Marvel movies?
It's interesting because I feel like we're putting it out there like Tony Stark is going to be the antagonist.
He's going to take the pro-government side, which is kind of funny because he would have had a complete 180 from his Iron Man 2 stance.
That's the thing that's like a little problematic for me about this particular storyline is he's like, why does he want to work with the government?
Because
of Avengers 2. I think the seeds for his the seeds for his change of heart are going to be in Avengers 2, where he's going to go, as a matter of fact, I thought we could control this ourselves. I thought that we could contain this on our own. We can't. It's too big for us. This is my guess, by the way.
Being
obviously,
too big. Do we all mean the Hulk?
We mean
I think he means probably like metahumans.
I think
people with powers, not just guys in suits.
Yeah, I think all of it. Yeah, anybody with powers, and I think he's just gonna feel like this is just a thing that we need help on. Which is actually a big move for Tony to ask for help. And then Cap, and seated in Cap 2 is the idea that he really believes in this idea of like maintaining civil liberties, you know?
I mean, he's old school American values.
He does.
And
almost libertarian.
Almost libertarian, yeah.
He's almost so old school.
I love
he's
that we're
new
like
again.
assigning political parties to.
But I mean, in the comics, Tony Stark didn't he end up becoming like Secretary of Defense for George Bush or something at one point after 9/11? And then he ran SHIELD for a while. But so, anyways, I mean, the idea is that, you know, with Iron Man essentially being pitted against Captain America, do we think then that, you know, are we going to see basically now the antagonists of other future superhero movies being fellow superheroes?
You know what's interesting?
Like, how long can they play that out for, maybe?
Yeah.
It looks like there's almost, and we're assuming, by the way, obviously Marvel has reworked things for the films, and they could find a way that actually he is not the antagonist, that he is on Cap's side, and that someone else is the antagonist, and they could turn things around the story. Assuming they don't, and that it's Iron Man versus Captain America, which I think is a really interesting.
It's more compelling.
It's a compelling fight because they have been billed to date as the co-captains of this team, and so for them to fight is really interesting. Which side do you pick? But then Winter Soldier is going to come
exactly.
up.
Like, where is
the
he?
The villain's going to come and be the hero. There's going to be a reversal of
He
fortune.
wants to come back and save his friend,
The
like
student
redeem
will
himself.
become the master.
The student will become the master.
Hunter will become the hunter.
I mean, if they're following the trajectory of those two stories, then
cliche will become the trope.
Then Bucky's going to take over the mantle of being Captain America, and so they're going to have.
And then the Falcon will be like, "We'll see about that."
We'll see about that.
That's an interesting sub-discussion because we kind of see that the way that Marvel is setting things up in the comics is kind of being reflected sometimes in the movies.
Yeah.
And I will also note there's a new Civil War series coming out from Marvel in 2015, which could shed even more light on what they might potentially do, or you know, how they roll this out, because it might not exactly follow that old school Civil War storyline, which, by the way, was also played out in one of the Marvel Universe or Marvel Ultimate Alliance games. I think Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2.
So we're all of the agreement then that more than likely Captain America will probably buy it.
Oh yeah,
I think he's gonna die.
He's totally dead.
But yeah, so who replaces him is the issue. The Winter Soldier, or you
Falcon.
Could have Falcon come in and do it, and then that would be a whole different like sort of makeup of the Avengers, I think.
Well, one rumor is that Avengers, and again, this is possibly spoilers, or it's just all speculation, depending on whether or not you trust the sources.
Well, depending on what ends up happening.
Yeah, but one rumor is that Avengers, the future lineup will include both. And I think this was Badass Digest that reported this, but would include Falcon and War Machine. And we already saw, again, like going back to, what was it, Iron Man 3, War Machine being kind of the government stooge, if you will. So it's like these things, as you did, to borrow your phrase, Chris, they have been seeding these for a while. The idea is that, you know, right down to SHIELD basically being a government agency, like this kind of constant butting of heads there. Now with SHIELD gone, and of course, I mean, Cap bringing all that down and Black Widow being part of it, it does seem like now they're kind of Empire Strikes Back. Now you have to pay for taking out the Empire in a way.
Right.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting what you say, because if you are the type of person that likes to kind of parse things out a lot, which we do, obviously. I think I would look to this comment, the new comic, the new Civil War, as hinting at what's going to happen, maybe even more.
Marvel's making weird moves, not weird moves, but like probably strategic moves. Weird on the surface, like they canceled Fantastic Four.
They're not. They're very strategic moves.
And they took Wolverine out of the lineup and stuff like that. I think those moves all hint at something, you know, more going on, like in their whole universe.
But it makes you wonder, though, like if you're just seeing these superhero movies, do you really care whether or not they canceled Fantastic Four? I mean, I don't want to get too far afield of what our main thread was, but like, you know, it's kind of great fan service in a way if you're trying to get that synergy between what's happening in the comics and what's happening in the movies. But for me, I don't really need that to marry up.
No, I don't either, but I think it's more like Marvel, the comics company saying, we want to align with the films and give people stories that, sort of dovetail into that.
I think it's more that. I think that there's seemingly some bad blood between Marvel Studios and Fox, right? And so they're like, we're just not going to promote the characters that are of value to you, whether that impacts your movies or not. I don't care. We're just not going to promote them. The end. And then I think they do. The movies will probably drive up comic sales. Because if anything, there's going to be people like us who are like, you should read this comic if you want to know about this movie.
Right.
Well, I want to, there's more on that particular topic that I want to get to in a few minutes, but there's one other little bit of news related to the Marvel Cinematic Universe and this kind of question about the heroes and the villains. The Russo brothers are reportedly up for directing both Avengers 3 and 4. Now, of course, you guys should know that they were the directors of Winter Soldier. They did a great job. So I think that's kind of cool that you're going to basically the rumor is that they're going to try and take over the mantle from Whedon because he had a contract for X number of years. Right. And he's a creative guy. He's got a lot of things that he wants to do. So, he's going to do his time with Marvel, get the Avengers universe set up, and then move on. But with all this Civil War stuff, with Cap probably getting whacked, all this, does this mean then we're looking at an Avengers 3 without Thanos like we had thought? Maybe Thanos doesn't show up until Avengers 4, and that other phase, now we're almost into phase 4 at that point of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Is that about bringing these splintered heroes back together then?
No, I think it's 3. I still think that he shows up in Avengers 3. I think that
as the main heavy, not like Guardians stuff.
As the main heavy. I think, here's what I think goes down. Ready?
Ready.
Villains and heroes become very mercurial, as they do in the comics. Like they sort of switch back and forth, right?
As they are in life.
As they are in life. Thank you, sir. As we know from the way that you like to murder and pet kittens. So so this is how I think it's going to go down. I think it's going to be like the events of Civil War play out in Cap 3. That reverberates through the next few movies that they do. Then the lineup changes. The heroes are splintered. It's chaos. It's just a mess.
Pandemonium.
What are we going to do? Pandemonium. What could possibly bring them together but the threat of the end of the entire universe?
And that threat is Josh Brolin.
And that threat is Josh Brolin, people. And I feel like then that's how the death storyline plays out in Avengers 3.
Yeah, I agree with
that. And that's how they come back together.
Could they bring Cap back in some magical resurrection way?
I think it's possible.
I really hope they don't. I'd like to think that
Kill him, make him dead.
No, I think it is a I think that's a good way for Captain America to go out. It means something. It stands for something, and he's a soldier, and soldiers fall in battle fighting for things that they believe in, ideally. And and I think that's a wonderful kind of close to that character. If you pull the movie thing, kind of like the Star Trek Into Darkness thing, and just bring them back through some sort of, magical contrivance.
And Star Trek 3.
And Star Trek, but Star Trek 3, look, that's getting far afield. But anyways, I think, it's going to be interesting times ahead here with viewers' loyalties to these heroes that we've grown to love being tested. So.